Yeah, so maybe doing it this way, Juan Jose can just watch it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, welcome everybody. So we've been fooling around in the first 400 years of the Middle Ages now. We're kind of dipping our toe in the High Middle Ages. And that's where we'll be spending the next couple of lectures. And I want to introduce, though, the next level of kings, the monarchy, via the Hapsburgs. I talked a little bit about this last time. You know, there's just a web of European history with so many connections and stuff. But I think one of the main through lines is the Hapsburgs. And that's going to enable us to talk about Spain. It's going to enable us to talk about the Low Countries. It's going to enable us to talk about Burgundy. Obviously, the Holy Roman Empire, first and foremost. And it's going to allow us to talk about the Ottomans, the Hungarians, and the story is going to end in great tragedy in the 20th century in World War I and II. So it's a great through story to as a framework to hang our hats on as we progress through the history of Europe. Now you'll remember we've been talking about the Franks and Charlemagne. Charlemagne dies. He's got 3 grandsons, right? Charles, and it's interesting over here, almost all the kings in the future France are given nicknames. Charles the Bold, Charles the Simple. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in the next couple of lectures talking about France. I'm going to spend a lot of time because of the Hapsburgs, and this is their power base, talking about the East, which went to grandson Louis. And right here in the middle is Lothair. And there's just a lot of problems that we're going to see. This is where Alsace-Lorraine is, right? This is Verdun. Milano is there, Juan Jose, when you get here. Your city of destiny, Milano, is in this zone. And then Rome. So here's my one slide on France that's going to have to hold us for a long time. I have to tell the story of the Hapsburgs. I have to just put aside France. But this one slide you have after the Carolingians finished, the Capets come, they control things for 400 years. Then Valois and Joan of Arc is going to fit in here, but we'll talk about her much, much later. And then there's a Henry IV, but here's the darn thing. There's 2 Henry IVs, and boy, did it take me a long time to figure that out. There's a Henry IV that is a king of France, the beginning of the Bourbons. And there's a Henry IV who's a German, a Holy Roman Empire. So there's a French Henry IV and a German Henry IV. With the Bourbons, that goes into all the Louis, primarily Louis the 14th, we remember, and the 16th, who is guillotined at the Revolution. So France will be back, but you're taking a second fiddle in the story that I'm going to be telling. the main story is in the east, as I said, Louis, grandson Louis's empire. And here we are at the Holy Roman Empire around 1200. And here it is at its peak. And it's continuing the tradition of Charlemagne, which was to introduce a uniting influence, at least in this area, through music and currency and a common market. And there are limits, though, as to how much consolidation they can do as a state, because we talked about how Europe is the product of three things: the Mediterranean legacy, the Christian church, which is part of the Mediterranean legacy, Middle Eastern legacy, and the Germans. And of those three, the Germans had the least notion of what a state was. And so they were pretty late in coming to political unity. But they did manage to come up with a first among equals, the emperors of the Holy Roman Empire. They weren't really very strong centralizing kings, but there were all the Ottos, and they had a renaissance of their own before the Renaissance that we're familiar with. And while the Germans were very tribally democratic, as time went on, princes began to hold more and more land, and the Germans lost some of their egalitarianism, and it gave way to strong princes. I'm not going to call them kings, although they called themselves kings, and they even called themselves emperors, but in no way were they comparable to the French, the Spanish, or the British strong men. And so how did they choose the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire? An emperor is a very hollow word. They're not emperors. They're just kind of presiding princes for the day. Well, they were chosen by electors. And so you're going to see, when I show you the map of the Holy Roman Empire, there are over 300 princelings. But what they do is they come up with the top 30 princelings, and they get together and they choose, okay, who wants to be an emperor for life, right? Basically. And then when you die, it's not going to be your son. We're not into heredity. We're going to meet and we'll pick another one. And so these are the electors. And when you travel around in Central Europe and you go into the castles and you see who did this and who did that, you learn about all the electors. And who the hell are the electors? Well, they're the people that are choosing the figurehead, and it really is a figurehead until a little bit later, of the Holy Roman Empire. And they would have these big convocations. This one's inside. Some of the electors met in the summertime outside, tents, the whole thing. You see that in the murals of the walls of Central and Eastern Europe. And here's a rough map of where the electors were. It's not very good quality, but I just wanted to show you. This is Louis's eastern part, Louis the grandson, from the Germanic part, as opposed to the French part and the Lotharian part. And there are many different ways to show who all the electors were. This is their family crests, and the symbol of the Holy Roman Empire, the double-headed eagle, which becomes the symbol of the Austrian Hungarian Empire. And I'm going to tell you how we get there. And it's by the Hapsburgs. So they are really the first continental German kings. And the bonus we're going to get with them is the Spanish connection, Juan Jose. We'll get to the French and the English a little bit later. Now, this is where they start. This is the Hapsburg family first castle, starter castle. And the starter castle is here. It's in Switzerland. It's near Zurich. And they start building out from here. And I'm pointing out to Juan Jose, here's Milan down here, and he can visit the Hapsburg castle by taking the Goddard Pass. And we're going to see that there is a connection between the Holy Roman Empire and Milano very early on. And I didn't understand that when we visited Milano with Ramsey. And Ramsey has a very good friend in Milano who took us around. And now I can understand why Milano was such a special place, because there is a connection to the Holy Roman Empire. And here is the Goddard Pass before they built the tunnel. When we went through, we went through a tunnel that avoided a lot of this. And that's what the road looked like before the tunnel, the modern road. But before 1220, and this is where we're going to really start with the Hapsburgs in the 1200s. Just south of where they were living was the Goddard Pass. And to get to Italy was a really hard slog, really hard slog. They lost a lot of donkeys, mules and horses on that footpath, really. Then came the era of building bridges. So I'm going to talk about the geography because it really explains the destiny of a lot of the history. We've got to understand the barrier of the Alps and what that represented, and how there was very loose connection between Switzerland and Italy before they started building these bridges. And the lower bridge is one of the first stone bridges. Very narrow roads, obviously. And here's a bridge here getting across these ravines with these rushing alpine waters going down to the Po Valley. And after those bridges were built, there was a lot more trade over the years. You could take vehicles. And here was the Goddard Pass, the connection right here. And this shows the extent of the Alps. The Alps go almost all the way to the coast. There is a coastal road. Here's Monaco. There's a coastal road that connects France and Spain, but that's the only road, right? The easily serviceable road. Irene, did Irene leave and come back? And so the Alps put up a formidable barrier. So there's not a much flow of troops and stuff. And here is that coast road in Roman times. So you can see they had a lot of roads that went up into the Alps, but no really functional road that would go all the way through to the Po Valley. The only way was on this coast. And if you're France, you control that road. Italy, you've got Italy in the palm of your hand. If you're Spain, and this is Barcelona down here, if you're Spain and you control that road, you control Italy. And we're going to see that Spain controlled parts of Italy quite easily because of the geography. So wait a minute. Juan Jose, when you listen to this, you'll recall we talked about Hannibal. And Hannibal went across the Alps with elephants. So what the hell? What was that all about? And, you know, just looking at the geography and looking at Switzerland and Milano, I decided, let's go back and revisit that. So we're going to time travel now back to 200 years BCE and look at what the hell, how did Hannibal get across these Alps to the Po Valley? I hope you don't mind this time travel. So Carthage was Phoenician. The Phoenicians were Semites. The Phoenicians gave us the first alphabet, but their a language, spoken language, is very close to Hebrew and Arabic. The Phoenicians were all over the place. Not only did they have Carthage in the early days, but they had Spain, cities in Spain. And Hannibal noted that there was these upstarts in Rome, and he thought he'd teach them a lesson and sneak down from the north by crossing the Alps. And this is our guy, Hannibal. And there is a lot of dispute about what actual route that he took. And when I looked at the pictures of 1220 and what those muleteers had to do to get across the Alps between Switzerland and Milano, I just had to wonder what it looked like for Hannibal. And so there are a few possible routes that he would have taken, and people have imagined what it was like. And so I'm fascinated with what people imagine. You know, there's nothing historic about this, but people have studied the possible routes and what might have happened. And here we see elephants falling off cliffs. That's pretty dramatic. We see elephants navigating narrow crevices. We see battles along the way. There were Celtic tribes. All Gaul was occupied by Celts, and they were in these mountains too, and they just did not welcome the Phoenicians, the Semites, to come into their Celtic territory. Here, elephants falling off cliffs, coming down treacherous overhangs, but making progress. He almost turned back a few times and almost gave up. But then you get to clear places like that where you can run down. You know, it's just the passes that you have to navigate, and the snow. And here are the Celts waiting for them, ambushing them. So it wasn't trouble-free. And here are the Celts up here, laying a perfect ambush above one of those crevices. But finally, he gets to an overlook, and here's the Po Valley in northern Italy, the Po River Valley, and he's made it. And so you can see him coming through here down into the Po Valley. Aiko.
Yeah, the thing is, I read the book, The Elephant Company, and found out that the elephants eat a lot. And for Hannibal to get through, I wonder how he fed his elephants. They eat a huge amount of food. And it
Yeah.
didn't look like there was any, it didn't look like there was much food to eat.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea. It's a mystery. But Hannibal winds up losing, right? He lost a huge percentage. Not very much got through, and he certainly didn't attack Rome. He clashed with them a couple of times, and he went back to Carthage. It was a failure. They tried again later and also failed. And we remember the movie Patton, right? Everybody with me on this?
Yeah.
Remember Patton?
Yes.
So Patton,
Definitely.
he's fighting there in North Africa, and he decides to visit Carthage. And the Romans finally defeat Carthage, and they go in, and famously, they put salt in the fields so Carthage can't grow crops anymore. And Patton, who believes in reincarnation, believes he was there for the final battle. It was never clear to me whether he thought he was Roman or Carthaginian, but there he was, and here are the ruins outside of Carthage. So, all right, back to the Hapsburgs, having gone through a little geography lesson, that the Holy Roman Empire, the Pope is in Rome, the emperor is north of the Alps, and they've got to negotiate around this, either by a coastal road or a slowly improving roads through the mountains. And one of the first things that happens when they build a nice road, not a nice road, but a serviceable road through the mountains that you can get soldiers across, is the Swiss conquer Milano. They conquer Milano. And so there's a lesson somewhere in that. You open a new road and you create opportunities for mischief. And I just want to point out, we're talking about the central part of the Alps and the western part of the Alps, but the eastern part of the Alps, they continue across basically into the Balkans. So we're going to learn a lot about the Balkans and the role they play in Europe, which obviously ends tragically in World War I. But notice north here of the mountains is the Hungarian plain, and we'll be talking about that. So here's a simple map of the Holy Roman Emperor, and you can see the empire has northern Italy and southern Italy at one point. Notice there's a kingdom of Bohemia. And then look at this other map over here. So this makes you think, oh, there actually is a unified empire. Well, this makes it clear there's not a unified empire. This is where all the electors are from, and they're not unified at all. Now, is that because of German democracy and tribalism? Maybe. And down here are the papal states. The Pope loves this arrangement, the Holy Roman Empire, because it implies that he's going to be protected by the Germans. And there's a lot of people he needs to be protected from, as we shall see. Here's the Kingdom of France. They're just perking along. We'll get to them later. And now I want to bring in Spain in just a minute. And here's Aragon sticking out down here. All right. So city states and being divided into little political units. You know what? Nationhood hasn't worked out exactly spectacularly. And there, there are theorists who say, you know, maybe we should get rid of nations and go back to Italian and German city states and small principalities. Maybe we could, that would be a better way of managing power rather than consolidating power into these strong nations. And so this is one person's imagination of where the major city states would be. Here's somebody else has collected here are all the places where there's at least a million people. What if we went back to the Holy Roman Empire and had nation states instead? You know, it's far out, but that's what I want to do on this last ride through history. Mega cities, we're already seeing those, and they're emerging. And here's the title of an article that, hey, this should be our social structure. And there's a map of the world with some ideas on how the mega cities, city states could be. And that reminded me of a book that Ramsey introduced to me called American Nations, that there are, in fact, 11 American nations. And this would be another way of trying to bring harmony to our politics. Maybe the reach, the cultural gap is too big. And according to Colin Woodward, here are the 11 different cultures, each with historical determinants. And thank God we're a federation. We can maybe manage this as a federation. You know, God knows we're pursuing different strategies with the pandemic. And this is, of course, the argument for states' rights. The problem is when one state does something, one cluster of states does something that is so odious that the rest of us can't live with. And so then we have a civil war. All right. So now to the Hapsburgs. We've got a little background, the Holy Roman Empire. The Hapsburgs have been coasting along for 300 years in their little Swiss haven. But they've been expanding slowly but surely. And by 1273, they have a pretty powerful overlord, Rudolph I. And he is powerful enough to get himself elected Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire in 1273. And how did he do it? This is where his home base. This is where that original castle is, right near Zurich. And he did it not by conquest, but by marriage. By marriage. He got his sons to marry into powerful families in Alsace and Swabia in southern Germany. And this is enough of a power base to get him elected the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, here's Bohemia. Keep an eye on Bohemia. Bohemia invades the Archduchy of Austria. All right. The Hapsburgs don't have anything to do with Austria at this point, nothing at all. But they're joint members with the Holy Roman Empire, and your enemy's my enemy. So Ottokar of Bohemia invades. Who's Ottokar? He's Slavic. Slavic. He's the son of King Wenceslas that we sing in our Christmas carol every year. And this is the clash between German culture and Slavic culture that we've talked about before and will certainly be talking about again. And I use the word culture now because when Juan Jose asked me what civilization, it's not ethnicity. I'm stopped using that. It's culture. It's German culture and Slavic culture. Because when we look in the DNA, it's all mixed up. And just the context to review, 5th century, the Slavs come down from the steppes and they spread out all in this area. And then come the Hungarians, and they're a big part of this story, of the Hapsburg story too. And they separate the northern Slavs from the southern Slavs. And you have the mountains that we saw earlier that come across here and stop the Hungarians, and they just stay on the plain of Hungary, a plain, very fertile farmland. So the northern Slavs are cut off from the southern Slavs, but when Bohemia attacks Austria, the Holy Roman Empire can say, hey, wait a minute, the Slavs can reconnect. If Ottokar keeps Austria, now they're united again. This just shows again the contrast between the plain of Hungary and the mountain people of the Balkans. And the militancy of these mountain people is eventually going to lead to World War I and the clash between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the retreat of the Ottomans. All right, that's just a very simplified look at it. So Rudolph, he allies with the Hungarians and he defeats Ottokar. And you can see him in his Swiss hat sitting on the chair accepting. So what the heck is a Swiss guy doing all the way over in Austria? Well, he was elected head of the Holy Roman Empire and he's doing his duty. And there's always the spoils of war, and the Hapsburgs get it. The Hapsburgs become the royal family of Austria, having defeated the Slavs of Bohemia. They are good diplomats. They allied with the right people. The Hungarians are very good fighters, but they take no prisoners. And Ottokar winds up dead, along with a lot of Bohemians. The Hungarians went in and just were ruthless fighters. So the Hungarians are players. They're just another example of wild men from the steppes, from the north, that come in and help reshuffle the deck. Whatever civilization we think is perking along, the wild men from the north have different ideas, and we're going to see another example of that very soon. Okay, so this is way too complicated, and I'm only going to want you to look at this part, at the upper part. This is Rudolph. We know Rudolph, the champion over the Bohemians. And it's going to take 6 generations for the Hapsburgs to really leverage their newfound territory, Austria. By the way, they spend so much time in Austria that they lose their home in Switzerland. The Swiss are not sentimental people. And if you haven't been spending a lot of time on your estate, somebody's going to come and take it. And so the Habsburgs are now totally divorced from Switzerland, but that's their home. That's where things started. Now, 6 generations later, okay, so I am skipping over to tell the story of the Habsburgs, a lot of stuff and a lot of socioeconomic evolution. I promise you, we're going to do it later, but I want you to have something to hang your hat on as we go through the next 1,000 years of history in Europe, and it's the Habsburgs. So 6 generations later, we get Maximilian. He's our guy. He is the founding father, and you could argue as much as Charlemagne, he had as much to do with the uniting of Europe into a semi-common culture. Maximilian I born 1459. And how does he do it? The same way the Habsburgs accumulated power near Zurich. They married well, and they continue to marry well. He marries Mary of Burgundy, and she inherits the lowlands, and I'll show you on a map all that she inherits. So he marries very well. They have a kid, Philip the Handsome, who also marries well. And this is Juana La Loca, the mad Juana. And who's she? She's the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella. So there's the Spanish connection coming through right there. And now that I've mentioned it, I want to just check back and make sure that Juan Jose hasn't checked in and I've missed it. Hold on just a second. Nope. Okay, we're back at it. All right. So remember now, Ferdinand and Isabella, there is a new beginning for Spain. Spain has been in the hands of the Muslims until Ferdinand and Isabella take it back with the Reconquista. So the Habsburgs are on the ground floor of the reemergence of Spain as a Western country. And you will remember the Caliphate of Cordoba kept the Greek tradition alive in the Dark Ages with some help of Jews who amounted to 5% of the population in Cordoba. But now you've got Ferdinand and Isabella, and unfortunately, they have a child who is quite mad, but not so mad in the early years that she can attract Philip the Handsome. And they have Carlos I of Spain, but he's Carlos V of the Habsburgs. So this is just another confusion for people wanting to learn history, is the nomenclature. And we're going to see that all this accumulation of inheritance from the Burgundies all the way through, we're going to look at a map, and there's this saying, let others wage war, you, fortunate Austria, marry. And they married well. They accumulated land through marital diplomacy. Here's Juana la Loca. And here's Philip the Handsome. Unfortunately, Philip the Handsome dies at an early age, leaving Juana grieving. And this may be when she became mad. And it also may be a political myth fostered by Ferdinand, who, after Isabella dies, tries to take over Isabella's lands that Juana thinks she has. So there's a lot of intrigue between Juana and her father, Ferdinand, a real soap opera. But before he dies, he did father Charles the First or Charles the Fifth of Austria and the Holy Roman Empire. And by now, the Hapsburgs are so strong that they almost always can get the votes to become Holy Roman Empire, just because Austria is so powerful. It's not inherited. They have to be elected, but this will go through, and you get the Holy Roman Empire being a player all the way up to the time of Bismarck in Germany in the 1870s. So this is why this is such a valuable through line, the story of the Hapsburgs. Now, typically, he marries the Queen of Portugal. And so here we go in summary. Here's all the places that they have. And let me just say the motto, AEIOU, Austria is destined to rule the world. And you can see Burgundy, Luxembourg is in there, the Low Countries all inherited from Mary of Burgundy. And here is Milano, Juan Jose, for when you listen to this. Milano stays a part of the Holy Roman Empire. But Spain apparently is controlling this road, and so they've got a lot of territory in Italy and in the Mediterranean, because they're controlling the road and the shipping at some point. So Carlos V, or Carlos I, has a great inheritance, and I left this in Spanish just for you, Juan Jose. Now here's an interesting connection. Britain. So if there's another through story, and obviously for the history of the world, the British Empire is important, but here are the connections between the Hapsburgs in Spain and Britain. Joanna is not the only child. She's the older child, born 6 years before Catherine of Aragon, who was Henry VIII's first wife, and she gives him a daughter. He wants a son. That's a problem, as we're going to find out, right? Juan Jose, this is one of our soap operas that you'll hear more than you want to hear, probably. But they have Bloody Mary, who is a Catholic, strongly Catholic, and Bloody Mary is what she's called because of her brief reign after Henry dies. The other connection here, and so there's a double link, The second double link is Charles and Isabella of Portugal. They have Philip II. This is the Philip the second of of Armada fame, and he marries Mary, Bloody Mary. So you got these connections that are clear and supplied by the history of the Hapsburgs. Thank you, Hapsburgs, in the Holy Roman Empire. And one problem with intermarriage and diplomacy, and we're going to see this other examples as we go on. The DNA of people who marry cousins is a risk. And you get a hint that there's something going on with the jaw gene. Later on, the best example of this is going to be hemophilia. There's other examples, but hemophilia is a problem. That's Queen Victoria. It's an X-linked defect, and women are at advantage. They're double X, right? So they get 2 bites of the apple. A man only gets 1 X from his mother and then Y. And so he only gets 1 bite of the apple. And so it's going to be the males that are going to suffer from hemophilia. And the Tsar's son has hemophilia just before the Russian Revolution, and the mad Rasputin convinces the royal couple, the Tsar and the Tsarina, that he can cure hemophilia, and they take their eye off the ball diplomatically. So you can argue this intermarriage helped consolidate and create a European culture, but there were so many downsides, and they certainly didn't do a very good job, the royal families, of preventing World War I, perhaps the greatest catastrophe that we know of. So the ups and downs of the Habsburgs, and the Habsburgs go all the way to the end of World War I. The other problem, well, I'll get to the other problem in a second. This is a summary of what the House of Habsburgs have gained, parts of northern Italy, including Milano, the Balkans. So we'll learn in Austro-Hungary that Croatia and Slovenia, Southern Slavs, are part of Austro-Hungary, and Czechoslovakia or Bohemia, which are part of the Northern Slavs, are all part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the downside of getting the Balkans is there's constant conflict with the Ottoman Empire. And Charles V sees that maybe the Habsburgs are spread too thin. So he's a very wise king. He abdicates. And as he abdicates, he bequeaths the Austrian part to his brother. He splits the House of Hapsburgs. And the Spanish continues on the Spanish throne, but the Austrian branch splits off. And there's his brother out here somewhere. The problem of inbreeding is matched by the pressure of this new Protestant revolution. And so he says, Brother Ferdinand, why don't you, we got a lot of problems. Why don't you go and take over in Austria? We can't continue to do this. from Spain. And so that branch, as I said earlier, continues the alliance with Hungary versus the Ottomans. And they basically become semi-permanent holders of the Holy Roman Empire. So how am I doing on time? We started a little late. Is it okay if I go a little bit beyond one?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I like maps, and this kind of summarizes again the Spanish Habsburgs and the Austrian Habsburgs. Let me just get rid of something here. And remember, Charles V is on the throne as they get the New World. So it's not just what the Habsburgs control in Europe, all this orange, incredible expanse. It's also the New World. Charles V was enlightened. He was raised in the lowlands. He had a tolerant Dutch education, if you will, in Flanders, and so he was a wise ruler, and very wisely gave his brother the duties of holding all this together in the East, because in the East you have the Ottomans being increasingly aggressive. And in 1529, they're at the gates of Vienna. And Charles V helps Ferdinand defend Vienna. And then again, later, in 40 years later, there's this great naval battle where the Spanish King Philip II now provides a navy to defend against the Muslims in the Eastern Mediterranean. Some people say that this was the turning point for Muslim, for Islamic, for Ottoman power. They were able to conquer Hungary and hold Hungary. So they're not that far from Vienna holding Hungary. They hold Hungary for almost 150 years. They've obviously got all of the Balkans except for parts of Croatia, and maybe a little bit of Slovenia up here. So Aiko and I had the opportunity of going through Slovenia with Ramsey, and Ramsey insisted that we visit Melania's hometown, which we did. But these Southern Slavs managed to keep a hold in European culture. The Southern Slavs over here were taken over by the Ottomans, and the Bosnians were complicit. The Bosnians converted to Islam, and that causes any number of problems. And just a review slide. And I've made these points already, that the Holy Roman Empire does take in the Northern Slavs, not just the Bohemians who are currently Czechoslovakia, but also eventually the Poles are folded into the empire. And obviously the Poles are very strong Roman Catholic. and that's as part of being part of Austro-Hungary and the Holy Roman Empire. The state of Poland, Lithuania, they controlled most of the Ukraine for a long time. By land mass, they were the largest country in Europe. But eventually the Russians come back and take half of the Ukraine. The other half stays in the Holy Roman Empire and Austria-Hungary. And so that's why you have this split in the Ukraine today between East and West. The Western part is a lot of Germanic influence. And as we heard from our Russian tour guides in Moscow, a lot of neo-Nazis. And in the East, it's Russian. So the other problem with inbreeding is infertility. And the Spanish Hapsburgs poke along for a long time, but around the time of Louis XIV, Charles II can't father any kids. And the line runs out. He only had a sister, and she was the Bourbons of France marry her with their own marital diplomacy. And the Habsburgs are no longer on the throne in Spain, but when they leave, they take with them, as you can see from this map, the kingdom of Naples, Sardinia, Corsica, and they've got Croatia, Slovenia. The Ottomans are slowly retreating. The Hungarians have kicked them out, and Austro-Hungary. And the story of the diplomacy between Austria and Hungary is interesting. It was not smooth at all, but it worked. It worked, and there was a lot of intermarriage between the Hungarian family and the Hapsburgs. This may be a good place. Well, here, the final thing, the Hapsburgs, they imitate Louis, all the Louis, the Bourbons, and they build their own version of Versailles outside of Vienna, Schönbrunn. And that's probably going to be a good place to stop. I've obviously skipped a lot of socioeconomic development because I wanted to give you one through story of what was going on in Europe. And now we'll build on that structure. I'll go back and show the economic development, the social development, the development of towns, the church. This is supposed to be mainly about Christianity. The book defines the 1,000 years that we're in, from 500 to 1,500 is the era of religion. And so a lot has happened with the church in these intervening years. They've become much stronger, building on the monasteries and the abbeys. And we're going to see them flex their muscle when we return and look at the socio-economic and cultural development of Europe that was going on at the time of the Habsburgs' rise. All right, so any questions?
thank you so much.
That was great.
Irene, you look like Black Power. That was great. I love how you weave these stories together and then once in a while come to, modern day and how it's fascinating.
It's really good.
I know. I like the storytelling. It's really, it makes it so interesting.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I was thinking when I was listening to you, you need to take this on the road. You really do. You need to teach a class like at a junior college or
Ollie online.
All right. You wouldn't have to ask me twice.
All right.
I love this stuff, and I love preparing, and I love exploring and finding the stories and weaving them in with where we've been. That's part of it too. And the first time you go through history and you don't know and you haven't experienced it, and even the second time, this is really the third deep dive through. You don't see where the story's going. It's just one damn thing after another. But once you've been through it and you know where it's going, you can create these through lines through the network, the cobweb that's history. Which if you just take it year by year by year, you just can't see the forest.
right.
I totally agree, which is where I was with history. It's like I've taken a number of history courses over my, adult life, but you're putting it together in ways that are just making my mind go, oh, that's what it is.
Well,
I was telling Pearl, I'm half German and half Irish, and you kind of think of Germans as Germans until you really get to see really what Germany really is, all the mishmash of all the different.
oh yeah, and that was Bismarck's genius. He took that mishmash and welded it together. Now, a genius that created a monster, I would argue. But he was it really took somebody with his will. They called him the Iron Chancellor, to put all this together and say, hey, we're actually one culture. We should also be one nation. But that nationhood may not be the best governance principle to follow, right? And we're seeing it now in this damn election.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 11 Nations book is one that Susie Manuel recommended to us some years ago, and I bought, and of course haven't read. But
it's good. It's well written.
The thesis of it is excellent, and
he's a journalist. He's not a historian.
Yeah.
And so he writes well too. But anyway, I have fun doing this, and unfortunately for Aiko, she sees me in the discovery stage where I'm going down blind alleys and then making connections and look at this, and she.
Thank God, Aiko, you love history.
Yeah.
Well, it sort of takes away from getting him to do things around the house, but
no kidding.
And it takes us away a little bit from what's going on right now, which is really scary.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have something to do at this time.
The whole Wisconsin thing that's happening.
What?
Yeah.
The Wisconsin.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's really
Okay, I'll see you next week, and
Absolutely.
I'll see if this actually recorded. I hope so.
Looking forward to next week, John. Bye.
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 See you next